Hi, I'm Pastor Michele.
And I'm Pastor Kathy.
Welcome to Advent Reflections. You know, we had planned to be together, Pastor Kathy, when we were recording this, but then something happened this morning. Uh, we can see it in your beautiful window, a little bit of snow. How is the snow gathering there? Got very much on the ground yet?
We have a little over an inch.
Wow, that's really cool. And you know how appropriate because today, as we begin Advent reflections, we're talking about joy. And I have to say, something that brings me joy is seeing the beautiful snowfall as long as I'm not driving in it. What about you? Do you like watching the snow
Yes,
as well?
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my dogs aren't quite sure how they feel about it yet, but I'll give a report next week, I think. And as we begin, and as we're talking about joy, I know some of you may be wondering, how is joy appropriate for Advent? Because often when we think about Advent, we think about those scriptures about the end of the age and eschatological times and Jesus' second return. And where is the joy in that? That sounds in some ways a little scary. But joy, I think, happens throughout our journey. And joy happens whenever we experience God with us. And so I wanted to share the first stanza of a poem that I read during the message on Sunday called Ode to Joy, which was written by Friedrich Schiller, who was a German poet, playwright, and historian. And he wrote this poem in the summer of 1785. And then he published it in a magazine that he created called Thalia in 1786. And this is what he wrote in English translation. Joy, beautiful spark of divinity, daughter of Elysium, we enter, drunk with fire. Heavenly One, thy sanctuary, thy magic binds again. What custom strictly divided? All people become brothers, where thy gentle wing abide. Now, this poem was then used some years later by Beethoven to create the fourth movement of Symphony 9, Ode to Joy, as we refer to it now. And I love that reference to Elysium, which was Greek, and just, it's like a state of bliss or delight. Truly, this does speak to joy, and in fact, the poem in German would probably be better translated to the joy. And I was just thinking about that, and so I was wondering what brings joy to each of us. And I shared I love the snowfall. Something else that brings me great joy is watching my dogs, particularly the young puppy as she's learning new things. Pastor Kathy, what brings you joy?
Oh my goodness, the first thing I thought of was watching grandchildren and just how much fun that they have and how they learn. But also, I have to say that there is a time in the morning when I am sipping a cup of tea and am still all warm in my pajamas and with my blankets and am feeling very cozy, and I I just find great joy in that, and it's such a beautiful way to start the day.
Indeed, indeed. Well, that does make me wonder, what do you think? Do you think joy is found only in the extraordinary, or do you believe that joy is found in those ordinary moments?
I think in ordinary moments. The spiritual practice, I think, of paying attention is really helpful in being able to be fully present in the moment. And I wanted to share something that I found online this week, that from Edward Foley, who is a professor of spirituality at the Chicago Theological Union. And he wrote, most Christians think that Advent is preparation for the birth of Jesus, but we cannot prepare for a past event. It is also not simply the preparation for his annual birthday. Rather, this season is an intense rehearsal of what Christian living is supposed to be each day, paying attention to the sacred revelations and surprising incarnations that the Holy One springs on us each day. Each day of our lives, every moment of our lives, is a potential divine ambush. Advent is a 4-week intensive that each year recertifies us, recalibrates Christians for detecting God's unpredictable yet constant reincarnating in the world. And that struck me in such a way, because I am always preparing for the birth of the baby, and for things that are can't happen again. But that idea of an awareness of God incarnating in ordinary things all around us all the time, God's very presence being available to us if we simply notice, that was revelatory to me.
Speaking of noticing, you might hear my little dog going boof boof, and you might even hear her barking, because you know what? I think she takes this quote to heart by Father Edward Foley. She is paying attention all of the time, and she's telling us the things that she's noticing. I just wish we understood what she's trying to tell us. I think she's noticing the snow right now as it's falling. Yesterday, she noticed I put out a Snoopy decoration in my yard, and she noticed it all day long. She kept going to the window and noticing and barking and telling us. But it does remind me, this Sunday at church, for those that come in person, we've invited people to bring nativity sets and set them out so that people in the congregation after service can go around and look and enjoy them. And it does remind us that yes, we're so busy preparing for Christmas that we skip over Advent. And I wonder, what do you think? It seems like we sometimes do that in life as well. We are so busy preparing for the next thing that we miss the moment that we're in, and we stop paying attention.
It's true. It's true. And can I share one more thing with you? I got all excited about that Edward Foley quote, and so I bought a book that is called "Preaching as Paying Attention," and this paragraph just jumped out to me, not for preaching, but just for all of us in general. And Edward Foley just has a funny way of saying some things. So I'm going to give you the little bit of the introduction before the real sentence or two that I love. Despite the research and evolving medical nomenclature, anyone who has spent time in the classroom or the pulpit knows that the lack of attention is not a new issue. While it is patently false that, as widely reported, the attention span of today's adults has declined below that of a goldfish, it is true that we exist in an environment laced with constant distractions. In the midst of our multitasking, we often fail to see which of the elements we're juggling are most deserving of attention. In the process, we can not only jeopardize our physical safety, but also blunt our capacity to recognize beauty. More profoundly, we might leave unrecognized the Christ in our midst, or forget to ponder how God might be present in the momentary chaos of our lives. Paying attention is a necessary skill for effectively negotiating the daily pandemonium that confronts us. And then he later mentions a poem by Mary Oliver, and it's a poem I've read, and I just hadn't noticed this part of it. And so I had to go back and look it up, and it's from Mary Oliver's poem, The Summer Day. And she said, I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. And she has another poem, Yes and No, that says, to pay attention, this is our endless and proper work. Paying attention, I think, is as much a prayer practice as the prayers that we speak. Just appreciating God in the moment and finding God in the everyday, and opening ourselves to that, to the presence of God, to the presence of love in our everyday life. And that, I think, is a source of joy that can bring us deep joy, even in the midst of chaos.
It reminds us what we hear in the gospel from last Sunday, to keep awake. And as
Yes,
we keep
yes.
awake, we're paying attention. Yeah. You know, that is a spiritual practice, and one that maybe we're not able to just on a flip of a switch just start doing. But maybe this week, if that's not something that we have been doing, we could be intentional for 5 minutes at a time. For these 5 minutes, I'm going to just try and take some time and notice and observe what's around me, and see where we're able to experience joy in the ordinary. One of the pieces of joy right now I have is this little guy right here who came over and asked, could he sit on my lap? And so while I was listening, Pastor Kathy, to all of those wonderful thoughts that you were sharing, I also and as I was thinking and reflecting on that, I was also enjoying this sweet little companion that on this very cold day is keeping me warm. So not quite a warm blanket or a warm cup of coffee in the morning, but definitely a friend who is quietly coming over and saying, you know, I love being with you and spending time with you, Mom. So yeah, so maybe I don't know. I think I just want to invite all of our friends who are watching today. If it's not something that you ordinarily can do, just intentionally take a little bit of time and then try and stretch it out a little bit more. So maybe your 5 minutes becomes 10 minutes. And maybe doing this one time a day, you try 2 or 3 times a day to find little time bits of time where you're just being intentional to see what do you notice in keeping awake. I find joy also in the ordinary, and I find joy in the ordinary because I recognize that, well, Jesus did come into the world, and Jesus will come into the world. Jesus still is in the world, and right now with us, abiding with us, and that gives me great joy.
Shall I close us with prayer?
Yes, please.
This is a prayer from Ted Loder's book, Gorillas of Grace. Eternal friend, grant me an ease to breathe deeply in this moment, this light, this miracle of now. Beneath the din and fury of great movements and harsh news and urgent crises, make me attentive still to good news, to small occasions, and the grace of what is possible for me to be, to do, to give, to receive, that I may miss neither my neighbor's gift nor my enemy's need. Precious Lord, grant me a sense of humor that adds perspective to compassion, gratitude that adds persistence to courage, quietness of spirit that adds irrepressibility to hope, openness of mind that adds surprise to joy, that with gladness of heart I may link arm and arm with the one who saw signs of your kingdom in salt and yeast, pearls and seeds, travelers and tax collectors, sowers and harlots, foreigners and fishermen, and open my eyes with these signs and my ears with the summons to follow to something more of justice and joy. Amen.
Amen. Oh, goodness. Well, thank you, Pastor Kathy, and thank all of you for joining us today for Advent Reflections. And we'll return next week. And next week, I hope Pastor Kathy and I can be in person, but it all depends on the weather and what happens. And for those of you that attend Renton United Methodist Church, I want to remind you that if it is snowing outside, you should check our Facebook or our webpage, www.rentonumc.org, to see if there's any notices about any in-person worship or in-person events. Sometimes because of the snow, we have to close the building, and we will certainly put that information out on our webpage and on Facebook as soon as we know. So I'm hoping that all of you are warm and cozy and that the snow will stop soon. And have a wonderful day. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.